What's up, Fleet? Forgotten Fox here, and today I will be reviewing the Tier 7 Premium Battleship ISE. The ISE is a hybrid ship having a partial carrier modernization replacing her two aft batteries, giving her access to two bomber squadrons in-game. As far as her equipment goes, for slot 1, I would recommend main battery modifications 1 or 2 to either maximize the amount of shells you can throw at the enemy or improve your flexibility in rotating your turrets, as they are positioned in a fairly odd layout. For your second slot, I would recommend any of the top 4 options for either improving your survivability or your flexibility. The ISE is a battleship at heart, and she does not handle exceptionally well, and due to her large silhouette, she is still vulnerable to incoming enemy fire and torpedoes. As far as slot 3 is concerned, you have torpedo defense modification, concealment expert, propulsion, and steering gears that are all viable upgrades. However, I would personally recommend torpedo defense system modification 1, as you will need to close the distance as the battle progresses, opening you up to enemy fire. As far as the ISE's supplies are concerned, I recommend just taking the 2 supplies that buff up your bombers and improved hit points, as the longer you stay alive, the more damage you can spit out. The ISE's bombers are quite unique to her, which is why I recommend buffing them as much as possible. Moving on to your commander, the ISE, being a Tier 7 premium battleship, is allowed to mount any commander from any of your other Japanese ships at no skill penalty. However, if you plan on speccing a commander specifically for the ISE, the 2 required skills would be Aerobatic Maneuver and Dauntless Dive. Moving on to the ISE's camouflage options, she has access to the same historical camouflage as every other Tier 7 battleship. I would recommend running this historical camouflage over the battleship and aircraft carrier camouflages if you can afford the large gold down payment, as I find the bonuses to be better suited to the ISE's strengths. As I mentioned in the supplies, for your elite bonus, you do have the option of either elite gun operator or advanced dive bombers. However, since dive bombers are the ISE's bread and butter, I would recommend buffing them up as much as possible. Now, I've told you how to equip the ISE, but how do you play the ISE? The ISE is an odd mixture of both a battleship and an aircraft carrier, one that involves medium to long range combat and very long range combat. For these reasons, you have to play the rear line extremely well. At the start of the battle, I recommend launching your dive bombers, as I am, to scout the enemy team's initial positions. As you can see in the video, the first ship to pop up is a destroyer. The ISE's dive bombers are quite limited in their capabilities of damaging larger ships. However, every bomb you land on a destroyer deals considerably more damage than a bomb hitting a battleship due to the destroyer's relatively low overall health. As you can see, the dive bombers lost quite a bit of their health just flying over the destroyer and screening cruisers. This is largely because the float planes trade about 100 hit points of their health for the float modification, which does allow them to be launched from the ISE at the cost of adding 2 seconds extra service time per aircraft, which is about 6 seconds longer service time than the Hiryu, which has the same aircraft but equipped for carrier-based operations. Now, as you can see, right off the bat, the first thing the ISE should be doing is contesting the capture point by providing long-range fire support on anyone who is attempting to capture while using her aircraft to focus down small, isolated, and lightly armed and armored ships like destroyers and light cruisers. Now, this Fuso is just coming into my range, and he is fairly isolated from his team, so it should be safe to send the planes after him with minimal losses. As you can see, the ISE does not benefit from secondary armaments, so it makes no sense to try and close the range, allowing you to sit at medium to long range with relative impunity while still laying down both fire from your main guns and from your dive bombers. Now, at this point in the match, I am still keeping a watchful eye over the cap. However, my goal is still to keep the enemies at as close to maximum range as I can, which not only prevents me from getting focused down, but allows my relatively small caliber 356mm primary guns to plunge through the fairly thin armored decks of most of my enemies. Now, again, I'm still attempting to prevent the enemy team from capping the base. However, noticing we've just lost another teammate and that they've pushed on to cap, I felt it was time for me to move in and attempt to knock some of them out. So I'm moving up, but I'm not rushing full force into the enemy team. I just need to get close enough to start capping the base while continuing to single out one enemy ship at a time. I can't tell you how many games I've seen lost because the team ignores or doesn't play the objective. So as you can see, I've rammed the rock, which is giving me cover from the enemies in front of me, while still allowing me to capture the base. And with the destroyer that went down a few seconds ago, me and our friendly DD are able to successfully capture the base. Now, I'm originally focusing the Arizona that is out in the open, and something that all players should keep in mind when you're with your team and there's a fairly large red force ahead of you, you should not do what that Arizona just did and attempt to go after them full speed. It is a very quick way to find yourself at the bottom of the ocean. As for that Bayern, he will be joining that Arizona very, very soon. And there he goes. Now, at this point, there's 30 seconds left on the clock, so it really doesn't matter who I go for and what damage I get done because this game is already won. I just decided to throw a few more shells and planes at this Arizona, and we end up finishing him off just as the game ends. And that's about what a typical ISE game looks like. But the ISE truly shines in divisions with aircraft carriers and other ISEs, as it allows you to have way more aircraft in the air than the enemy team can field, giving your team total air supremacy over the enemy. Now, this match I played with a couple of my friends from the Premo Armada, who are queued up in an ISE and a Hiryu. Combined, that gives us a grand total of 12 dive bombers in the air at any one time, and the 3 torpedo bombers from the Hiryu give us a total of 18 offensive aircraft plus the Hiryu's fighters, which is quite a strong attack force when directed at one enemy ship. If coordinated correctly, a force like this can be used to take out a single destroyer in under 45 seconds, turning a 7v7 into a 7v6, which is an unprecedented advantage, especially in a game where the destroyer has such a large impact for a relatively small amount of hit points. Now, I decided to go left on this map primarily because the enemy team is a battleship heavy team, and I knew that their destroyers would be lurking around the islands over by A, which is why me and my division mates decided to focus down the C and B caps, which is what we are working on with our aircraft. Now, since we just took out that destroyer, I don't really have an isolated target to focus with my aircraft, but it looks like this cruiser might be straying a little bit far away from his battleship's protective AA screen, so I go ahead and drop the bombs on the isolated cruiser rather than attempting to penetrate 3 ships worth of AA. Now at this point in the game, we're still ahead, but our one destroyer at A cap is quickly falling to the relentless fire from the enemy team, so I take that as an initiative to push extremely hard on the C cap. Again, I don't recommend that you run up to point blank ranges with the ISE. However, the ISE is still part battleship, which means that when necessary it can be used to soak up damage for your team. Now, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead here in this battle, but keep an eye on the aircraft positions in the minimap because this is a very close game. Now, my goal at this point was to attempt to take out some of the enemy ships, as they were all fairly low health. My dive bombers were having trouble penetrating the AA screen, and the enemy carrier started to focus me down. But the ISE, again, being part battleship, can have a very large influence in the end game, like right now, where it is able to use its large hit point pool and powerful main battery to run in and gun down the low health opponents who have been worked down earlier in the game. Couple citadels on that Colorado there. I'm trying to put the aircraft on him to finish him, but it looks like he's going to be popping a repair kit and a damage control party, which allows him to survive my salvo. With 30 seconds left on the clock and only me and my division mate left alive, this is a pretty close game, so trusting my division mate to get the carrier, I went after the Colorado, and my division mate ended up surviving barely on 400 health. Now, to recap, the ISE is a special breed of ship. She relies on using her planes as spotting for your team in the early stages of the battle, while maintaining a relatively long range, and then towards the end of the battle, moving in where her superior hit point pool and armor, as well as her large caliber guns, allow her to make quick work of the remaining enemy ships. Now, the dive bombers can be finicky sometimes. As you just saw, I missed all 6 hits on that York there, but when used on small boats like light cruisers and destroyers, every 1,600 damage bomb is worth considerably more, taking a chunk out of a small ship than a scratch out of a large one. And that should do it for the Tier 7 Premium Battleship ISE full review. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the latest ship news, reviews, and more. Now get out there and blow ship up.